The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Podcast Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, the podcast, where today we're going to be discussing the movie Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. We're going to discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this movie about the J.K. Rowling Potterverse. And joining me today on the panel are Lynn Francisco. Hi, Lynn.
Hello, Dom.
And Thomas Sanjurjo. I did it again.
You did it again. It's J's like ages.
J's like ages. Sanjurjo.
There you go. That's it.
Yes. Okay. I will get this eventually. I've only had like 4 opportunities to get it wrong, so
I'll keep coming back until you get it right. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So, so we're talking about the movie Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The first one that came out in 2016, and we're talking about this now, obviously, because we're a little over a month out from the sequel, Fantastic Beasts 2: The Crimes of Grindelwald. And Lynn, you were on the original Secrets of Harry Potter podcast panel, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I thought so, and I forgot to check to make sure. But so you've been at this with SQPN for a while, talking about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I was not on those, but
yeah, I actually joined the panel at episode 37.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was when we were starting to talk about Deathly Hallows.
Okay, and Thomas, you've read all the books, seen all the movies?
Yes.
I have, yes. Read all the books and seen all the movies. So.
Okay, so same here. Although it's been a while since I've read the books, but I still think I remember things pretty well. So let me first just kind of give first I want to do a little business, just to take a second, folks, to say, remember to like Secrets of Movies and TV, the podcast, on our SQPN's Facebook page if you can. Retweet us on Twitter. Leave us comments there. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app. Even on YouTube. We have our YouTube SQPN YouTube channel. We post these as audio movies, so there's no video, but you could listen to it there. And then leave us a review in all those places. Share the podcast with your friends, please, because I say that because that's the only way we grow, is when you share the podcast with your friends, when you like it, and by your action. There's no way we could buy enough advertising to really promote the podcast the way it deserves. We're not a big media company. We're not NPR, but we think this is a good podcast, and we hear from you folks who say you enjoy this, and if you do enjoy it, please share it with others. Share it on social media and do those things like to like it. We really appreciate it. And then I want to recommend 2 other shows from the SQPN network that are really good right now. We've restarted The Secrets of Star Trek, and we've been digging into a lot of all of the series, including upcoming. We're going to be going back. I know we talked about Discovery's first season on this podcast earlier this year, but we're going to go back and we're going to talk about each episode of Discovery as it comes along, as well as all the other series. We're going to talk about Enterprise and even the animated series. So that's been a lot of fun. So please be sure to go to sqpn.com/Trek. You can subscribe to that. And then The Secrets of Doctor Who. We've been doing this for a long time, but I want to mention it now because the new season of Doctor Who is just about to start, and we're going to be talking about it. And this is a season you're going to want to talk about, and you want to hear me and Jimmy Akin and Father Corey Stika. We're going to be talking about this. This is, I think, the biggest change in Doctor Who since 2005 when they rebooted the series. So, be sure to go to sqpn.com/Doctor Who and subscribe to that as well. Okay. All the business aside, let's talk about Fantastic Beasts. I kind of want to, go back and kind of lay the groundwork of what it is we're talking about here, this movie and where it came from. Did either of you ever see the book that J.K. Rowling wrote called Fantastic Beasts? Lynn, you saw it and you read it at the time. I mean, read is kind of, it wasn't a novel. What was the book?
Well, it read more like a reference book. So it was just simply a list of the various different magical creatures that existed in that universe. Okay. And also too, there were these little cheeky writings on the margins between friends. And you know how in the old days, before all this electronic stuff, when you check out books from the library, you have a card, you have to sign the card. They stamp a date in the card that says this book is due on such and such a date. And so I remembered that, well, at least my version of it had something like this, with all the names of the various characters that we know and love. And then, of course, there's some other like little notes, or actually, come to think of it, my version may have also said property of Harry Potter or something like this. I don't quite remember. It's been a while.
It was a movie prop that kind of based off of the fact that Harry got these from his trip to Hogwarts initially.
Right. Yeah. So the book itself, the textbook, is mentioned in Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, if for the American version. Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter novel. It's mentioned as one of his textbooks. And Rowling kind of took that little tidbit and developed it into a fun accessory, in a sense, I think, like as you described it, Lynn, which is just sort of mentioning the various magical creatures of that world. And then at some point later, I think it was 2013, if I read correctly, Warner Brothers, who had just finished all of those, 8 Harry Potter movies and all of the money that goes along with it. Now that was about to dry up, and they decided, well, how else can we tap into the Harry Potter golden tree and get some of that golden money sap out of it? Let's base some more movies. And so they went to her and they came up with the idea of turning this book, which is a sort of a reference book, into 5 movies, this is the first of 5 movies. And it focuses on this character, Newt Scamander, and it takes place, this movie takes place 70 years before the events of the first Harry Potter, and it takes place in New York City. So, let's start from there. Thomas, I'll start by asking you. Does this feel like they're spreading? How does Bilbo put it? Like too much butter over too little butter over too much bread.
I love this movie. Okay. This is my favorite Harry Potter movie.
Oh, awesome! Okay.
I know that's probably sacrilegious, and someone's gonna say that's horrible. You can't say that. It's not even really part of the main line. But there's so much that is right with this movie and the character of Newt and how Eddie Redmayne plays him on screen. Okay. As a teacher, I have a real soft spot for autistic kids, and that Redmayne plays it to the hilt as Newt being this sort of aloof kind of antisocial almost character that's making his way through, and he understands magical creatures, but he doesn't understand people. Right. Yeah, and it's sort of unlike Harry, who, while he's the hero, everybody loves Harry because he's the chosen one. But exactly. Newt is the kind of not. Yeah. Yeah. Newt's got that. Newt is just he really isn't. He's very much he's going to step back and try and stay out of the limelight as much as he can because he just wants things to kind of settle down. Okay. And Lynn, how does this movie fit for you? Is this movie, are you going to be a heretic like Thomas and say that this is better than all of the other Harry Potter movies, or I mean, how do you feel about this movie in comparison to the others? Well, I can't really say it's better than or less than the others because, in my opinion, it's different. Because it's set in a very different time frame. And I really appreciate that that J.K. Rowling is going back to a different era, because it almost sets up what you see in the later Harry Potter stories. And so I think it's very interesting to see this, and also to see a different magical culture as well. Here she goes to the United States. And of course, she kind of manufactures a reason for him to go. Like there's this, spoiler alert, this
creature that he wanted to return to, I think, was it Arizona, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that was his entire reasoning for going to the States. Of course, they have to also manufacture a little adventure to go along with it. So, oops, creatures escaped. Ouch. And he just stumbles onto, something else from there. So, I mean, it's a very interesting plot device. But yeah, I can't really say, oh, I like this better than or whatever, because in my mind, it's just different.
I agree with you that it is different. I do really appreciate the different setting, the different characters. We don't even see Dumbledore in this. I mean, it's a whole new set of people. Unlike, I think maybe Leta Lestrange might be the only person that we see a picture of who's from the Harry Potter, and we get references to Dumbledore, but we don't see him on screen. So, it's a whole new set of people, a whole new circumstance. I mean, there is a tendency, there is a trend, put it that way, in a lot of stuff today to do prequels. And this is kind of a prequel, although not directly, because this isn't about how Voldemort became Voldemort and Harry became the Chosen One. This goes like it's almost like if you want to compare it to, say, Star Wars. It's not about how the Emperor became the Emperor. It's about how the Emperor's master became the Emperor. Like Grindelwald is Voldemort's origin, shall we say. So I do appreciate that they kind of they went beyond the first story to make something new. I agree with you on that. I like that idea.
I like the concept of expanding the world so much because I think one of the things that all of us Americans thought when we first saw Harry Potter was what about the schools here? I mean, that's great. Yeah. It's great to get a letter to Hogwarts, but I'm in the States. I don't think that's going to happen for me. So, how does that all fit in?
I have to say I'm a little miffed at Rowling because the American Wizarding School originally was supposed to be in Salem, Massachusetts, of course, which is where I lived when I was reading all these books. And so, I was like, of course, it has to be here. This is the place. And then they changed it to some other, like, I forget even where Ilvermorny is supposed to be, but it's like upstate New York, I think it is. And I'm like, excuse me, what's in upstate New York? What's so wizarding about that? So it's kind of funny. There's actually a little, we should maybe talk about it, a little controversy about how Rowling has portrayed magic American style. And one of the things that comes up early on is this idea that in America, unlike in Britain, in America, wizards and they call them we call them no-mages, or wizards and muggles are not allowed to interact. They're not allowed to be friends. They're not allowed to, obviously, if they're not allowed to be friends, they're not allowed to get married, although somehow they're getting these children of no-mages. So obviously some people are getting around that. And it's supposed to come out of the Salem witch trials, and that we're on a hair trigger for more witch trials. And in fact, one of the antagonists of this story is this group called the New Salem Preservation Society. I've seen it referred to a couple things, but I think in the movie itself it said Preservation Society. And where people want to have witch trials again and this sort of thing. And it kind of sets up this system of, well, see, in America, they're kind of racist against witches, right. Which I think is sort of Rowling's kind of take on how in the 1920s, which is when this is, America was more racist concerning, minorities than Britain was. And I think it's supposed to be a take on that. What do you think about how she set that up, that difference between U.S. and British wizarding? Lynn, do you want to start on that? Do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, to be honest with you, it didn't even cross my mind when I first saw that. It was just, I did notice that was very noticeable, where they had a very strict no fraternizing. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and in fact, with the No-Maj character, Jacob, I think that's his name, they wanted to obliviate him immediately. But,
right.
but I guess, he was probably meant to be a part of the adventure. And so they just didn't. And then, of course, in the MACUSA, I think they were going to do that, but then Queenie managed to save him from that fate. So
she did.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was the one thing I really noticed the most. But to be honest with you, that connection didn't exactly cross my mind. So,
okay. How about Thomas? Did any of that? Yeah. I mean, it didn't immediately jump to me until I started reading stuff about it. So it's not surprising.
No, it was one of the first things that I noticed in thinking about it, because I like that time period. And, that's the time period where you're talking about a lot of Irish immigrants. And there were a lot of people coming back from Europe, which is one of the things that Kowalski was doing. He was part of that group that was sent out to Europe during the First World War. They were returning. And so they had a much broader view of the world than anybody back home. And it's interesting to kind of see a different take on that you can kind of toy with different things, because it's not as blatantly racist, but you still get across that same sense of separation and of anxiety and stress.
One thing that is very striking is that the president of MACUSA, which it stands for the Magical Congress of the United States of America, which is the equivalent of the Ministry of Magic in Britain. But the president of MACUSA is a black woman, which, right. For the 1920s, that's pretty progressive. That's pretty modern, and seems to be a somewhat deliberate choice on the part of the filmmakers and Rowling, I would think.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting the difference in the way that they treat the goblins, too, because they have a very different take on how the goblins interact with the wizards in the United States versus in England. They're much more close to them, and they seem to be much more friendly with them rather than this kind of stilted professional goblins versus the less professional wizards that are all around them.
Right. That's true. There seemed to be that sort of American egalitarianism at work there in that sense. Which is sort of an interesting contrast to the perceived racism, or not even just perceived, I mean, the real racism which existed. So I wanted to kind of talk about the story, the big story, and the big villain, which is Grindelwald. And we get this somewhat extensive introduction to, the classic newspaper headlines being shown to us, although they're the Harry Potter universe newspapers where everything's animated, which is fun. But we get these headlines about this Grindelwald, Gellert Grindelwald, who's on the loose, and he's, so we quickly learned he's of the ilk of Voldemort. He hates Muggles, wants war between wizards and Muggles, that so on and so forth. He's, he gets stamped with the evil stamp at birth, and he's a bad guy. I mean, he's not a very complex character. There's not a whole lot of I still sense good in him going on in this. Sorry, I'm a Star Wars fan at heart. I keep making Star Wars references. So what is so we learn in this, again, folks, this is a spoiler-filled podcast, so I'm not holding back here. We learn that the character Graves, the Auror Graves, which, that the name is very clearly a sign that this is right. Grindelwald. But Graves is Grindelwald in disguise. What's he after here? So he's trying to find a kid with what do they call it? The
Obscurial.
Obscurial. This obscure, this unusual power, very, very big power. What's Grindelwald after here? What's he doing here in America? Did you get a sense of that? Like, it took me a little bit to kind of figure out what's going on with Grindelwald.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out where this places it in the timeline, because we know a little bit about Grindelwald and his interactions with Dumbledore. And that there was some communication there, that there was some issues with the wand between the two of them, and so I'm interested in seeing where in the timeline this falls for that, because I really haven't figured out, and I don't know, I haven't read too terribly much about it to figure it out, but I haven't figured out where it falls in that timeline just yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really put that together either, but it just kind of made me wonder. Well, couple of thoughts here. I think Grindelwald was also interested in like a pureblood kind of community. Yeah. So we've seen a little bit of that in the Harry Potter series, with Voldemort, having his pureblood wizards followers. So, that's probably one aspect that may be coming back in later sequels. But then as far as the Obscurial is concerned, if memory serves me right, this is some sort of like a dark, untapped kind of power that a witch or a wizard has, that they have no control over it. And it makes me wonder if Grindelwald wanted to somehow tap into that darkness in some way to augment his powers, or to use that for whatever goal he has.
Yeah, perhaps he thought because the Obscurial usually manifests in a young child under 10, and therefore presumably a child he thought he could control. Of course, we find out it's an extremely rare type where it's a much older child, played by the same guy who ends up, Ezra Miller, I think it is, who plays the Flash in the Justice League movies, the DC Justice League movie, which I for the longest time, I'm like, who is that? So I IMDb'd it, and oh, right, he's the Flash. So he's older and therefore less controllable, and that threw a monkey wrench into his plans. As far as where this lands in the sequence of events that we learn about I think it's in Deathly Hallows, where we learn all about the wand. I think we at least find out when things happen in the Crimes of Grindelwald movie that's coming out in a month. From what I've seen from the trailers, because we're going to see Dumbledore, and we're going to see that he will. Here, Newt Scamander is in New York, happened to be in New York at the right time of the right place. There's no real sense that he was sent there on a secret mission, I don't think. But in the next movie, he's specifically being sent by Dumbledore on a mission to Paris, I think is where that one takes place. So I think we're going to get more about that relationship and how Dumbledore and Grindelwald interacted, and that perhaps this is after it. And I think we're also going to see a young, what's Voldemort's real name?
Tom Riddle.
Tom Marvel or Tom Riddle.
Tom Riddle, yes. We're going to see him as well. Presumably not David. Was it David Tennant who played?
No, he did Crouch.
Bartemius Crouch. Yeah.
Oh, right, a young Crouch. Okay, but I forget who the actor was. But there are some of the actors from the Harry Potter movies who showed up in flashbacks in the Harry Potter movies as these characters. They're actually are going to be in the Crimes of Grindelwald movie. So I think we're going to find out where the things are. But my sense is those things have already happened. So
yeah, I thought some of the things in this movie that were so great is one of my favorite moments is really early on. I rewatched it this week just to prep for it, and then the opening scene where you see only the back of Grindelwald's head and the haircut is a certain way, right? And then when you first see Graves, his haircut's exactly the same way, and I thought that was just such a nice flair to throw onto that moment.
That was very good.
They do a really good job of playing up that character and who he is and what he's about, and you really do wonder, even from the very beginning what his deal is, and then as it goes along, it seems to be more and more and more. But then to really leave the reveal for Newt right at the end, I thought was a fantastic move in the movie.
Yeah, that's one of the things I liked about this movie is that it's not simplistic. It's not just Newt versus Grindelwald. Graves / Grindelwald is the bad guy. I mean, they're actually working against him. But really, the fight is against ignorance about these magical beasts. I mean, that's really what Newt is about. Let's talk a little bit about Newt and the magical beasts, because these creatures were so great, so imaginative. Did you have a particular favorite? Like, I think mine was the little, I don't know the names of them, but the little platypus that loved the gold and just kept
the
sneaking out. The Niffler, right. The Niffler. Love that little guy. It was hysterical. I mean, there was such a nice, they provided a nice break of the action and the tense, the tension in the movie with these little comedic bits. And I really thought that was very good way to break up the pacing a bit. Did you have a particular favorite creature moment with you, Lynn?
I like the little boat truckle, I think is what it is. And especially the one that was so attached to Newt.
Yeah, no, and the way he interacts with the whole group of them when he's talking to them, where he's like trying to get it to go back and it won't.
Right. This is why they are mean to you, because you get favoritism.
Yeah.
that was really good. I mean, such imaginative creatures. There's the rhinoceros-like creature.
Oh, yeah.
That was in Heat. Of course, you have to have this crazy giant creature in Heat moment chasing Jacob Kowalski across the ice. Those sorts of moments. But one thing I kind of wish we got a little more understanding of is this creature that was the point of him being in America. I wasn't sure what it was, if it's some creature from Native American mythology or something. Because maybe it's a Thunderbird.
Was what I thought it was.
Okay,
that's what it's called. Yeah.
Okay. Because we know the Thunderbirds are the Air Force Thunderbirds. Their name comes from a Native American mythological creature, flying creature. But okay, and that's why there was lightning and storms at the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think when you first meet it, it's raining, and you can tell that it's the creature that's causing it to rain, because then the creature calms down and lands beside him, and it dries out.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Tina. Well, actually, I want to kind of talk about Kowalski first, because Kowalski is a key character here. He seems sort of like a tag-along, but Kowalski is the audience. He is our proxy. He is a Muggle. He's being introduced to this magical world. And him seeing Newt's zoo of magical creatures is us seeing it, and how we hope, hopefully we would react to it. But he's such a great canvas. There's not a lot of backstory on him. We know he's a veteran, a soldier who served in World War I. He's a baker trying to open a bakery, but that's kind of it. Like, there's not a lot to the character, but yet there's something about him that's very endearing. What is it, do you think, Lynn, that really made him such an endearing character?
Well, I wondered if it was perhaps just the way he interacted with the others, but also too, and you even mentioned it, his reaction to like the zoo, his reaction to the magical world that he got exposed to. I mean, it's just this kind of, childish wander that he gets to it. And I think this is what makes you feel some sympathy for him, that, he's thrown into this situation, and you just want to see, okay, how's he handling it and how's he dealing with it? And you're just kind of cheering for him as the film progresses on.
Yeah, because he kind of gets stuck in the middle with, the switching suitcases, which is a classic. Actually, it's a classic trope of comedy movies of the 20s. That just idea of switching suitcases and the messed up identity and all that sort of thing. Thomas, what do you think of Kowalski and how the role he plays in this plot?
I love it. He does the buffoon character so well, because he doesn't overplay it. You don't ever feel like he's really a fool or anything like that. He does not belong where he is, but he's doing the best he can to make it there. And I think my favorite moment with him, though, is when they're sitting around the dinner table with Queenie, and she's just made that fantastic dish for him, and he asks for her to stop reading his thoughts for a moment so that he can give her a genuine compliment.
Right.
And that's such a great moment. It just tells you everything you need to know about that character. Not stop reading my thoughts because it's freaking me out or anything, but I just want to give you a compliment, and I want to say it without you just reading my mind to hear it. It's
such a genuine moment with him, because he's obviously very taken with Queenie.
Right.
but it's such a genuine moment of just of personality, of gentlemanliness, of just he's such a likable character in that moment. You're right. Let's talk about the. I was going to talk about them before. But let's talk about them now. Is Tina and Queenie, and since we mentioned Queenie, let's start with her, even though Tina is more important to the plot. But Queenie, I really liked her. I mean, because she's obviously beautiful, but her power is legerdemain, which is mind reading. And as a beautiful woman, she knows what she even says. Oh, don't worry, that's what most guys think when they first see me, and I'm used to it by now. And you can imagine that's got to be a tough thing, and maybe it's a little bit close to reality in some ways for many women. Now I'm speaking out of school here because I'm not a woman, but maybe Lynn, you could jump in on this one. But this idea of having to deal with that sort of interaction to begin with, but yet she has such a friendly attitude the whole way through. What do you think? What did you think of that portrayal, Lynn, from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I thought. Oh, I'm just trying to remember right now. I'm sorry, but because I think our first encounter with her, she may have been doing some sort of household chores or whatever. And she wasn't exactly all dressed up, but the way that they portrayed her putting some sort of a dress or something on in Kowalski's presence, it just kind of made me wonder, what were they trying to get at there? Because I mean, Kowalski it obviously had his attention. It's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful woman, that type of thing. But and if she says yes, so I'm used to this. Unfortunately, it is kind of a fact of life that, some have to deal with, that you get this unwanted attention. But, it's pretty much how you deal with the unwanted attention. Do you deal with it with hostility, or do you deal with it with humor, or do you deal with it with grace? And so I think that's what they were trying to portray with the Queenie character.
Okay. Yeah, because she was kind of flirty, wasn't she? When she was doing the getting dressed bit.
I think they were both flirty to each other anyway, weren't they?
Yeah.
I get the sense she's not around other men very much. I think Tina keeps her away from guys.
Right. Well, and I think it was really interesting because you got these kind of undertones of the Betty Boop kind of character, where there was this real just easygoing, naturally flirtatious. And then there was also the sense that she could take care of herself because she could know when she was getting too far by just reading someone's mind and saying, "Oh, okay, now we got to put the brakes on this because this is you've gone too far with it now." And so you kind of got that sense that she knew where she could push the boundaries to and have it be acceptable.
Yeah, and later on when she's working to get them out of the MACUSA headquarters, she uses her ability and her natural attractiveness to kind of manipulate or maneuver these guys. Was it Abernathy, which was Tina's boss? She very deftly maneuvers him in such a way as to let her go. And then the other guy, the guard, who she just has to blackmail him straight up. Oh, by the way, I'm going to tell your girlfriend about what, that you've been stepping out on her if you don't, let me go. I mean, she's like, when all else fails, Goldie has, or Queenie has Queenie Gold, I think it is. Yeah, Queenie has a backbone of steel, and you better be careful.
Right.
So I liked her. And then we have Tina, her sister. And so Tina is the classic character of the little guy who's supposed to be so much more. Rowling has that sprinkled out through her books, where she's used to be an Auror. We find out that she ended up getting busted down to this really this permit office, the wand permit office, because she encountered the what do they call her, the great, this really great name, Mary Lou Barebone is the woman from the New Salem Preservation Society, and she found her beating a child, and she used her magic to stop her, and that of course is a violation of all kinds of laws and rules. And they had to obliviate her. I think obliviate is usually we would say obliviate means like destroy, but to make oblivious is I think is what the spell is supposed to be. I mean, it is supposed to be. So she gets busted down, and so we have this classic character of, it's a classic cop character. I was the hotshot cop. Now I broke the rules, and now I'm back on the bottom. But I know that I've still got to go out and break the big case, and and then I'm gonna go do it. And she's sort of like that hard boiled cop. She's Bruce Willis in this,
right? Die hard.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yet there's also a bit of a romantic tension between her and Newt, which is never fully blossoms in this until the very end. There's a hint of because, as you mentioned, Thomas, that Newt is got this very socially awkward is putting it mildly,
right?
this social inability. And yet he comes enough out of his shell to kind of give her a sense that he does like her at the end. So there's this connection between them. And I found Tina to be, they didn't overdo her, right? I mean, how do you feel about the Tina character?
I think they did. I think they did a really good job with her, and because it could have been a lot of things. And that's the thing that I really love about all of the characters in this movie is that they could have been caricatures. Every single one of them could have been easily written as a caricature, but the actors rein it in with these small quirks and these ways that they turn the character into something deeper than just that iconic, hard-boiled cop or this socially awkward professorial kind of character, or with Queenie, where it's there's just enough of the Betty Boop to keep her interesting and engaging, but then there's also this deeper level of no, she's really capable and able to stand up for herself if push comes to shove. And so I think it's so great to watch all of them just be really full, well-rounded characters. And Tina's no exception to that. She definitely has a lot more depth there than just that initial read that we get on her.
Okay. How did you feel about her, Lynn? What did you think of Tina?
Yeah, I agree with that assessment, that the way that she was portrayed, and it could have very easily gone in a different direction. But yeah, I think the way that she was portrayed made her a little bit deeper than what you see. And, what I also remember very clearly, too, was that one scene, the near execution scene, where they pull her memories out and then stick it in that pond so you could actually see her memories. And, I think that was also, a very interesting show of what her character is, and even gave an interesting clue, that was important to the plot a little bit later on down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that has always kind of concerned me with the world of Potter is how it's such a the sense of justice of punishment, criminal acts, that sort of stuff. There seems the consequences seem over the top in many cases.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There seem to be arbitrary rules and harsh punishments. It seems to be the order of the day in the wizarding world, and I'm not sure how to deal with that. Even like authority figures are often portrayed as just being arbitrary. Like for example, when the MACUSA president, she's mad at Tina for not telling her about Newt. Well, she tried to when she came to the Aurore's office and you threw her out. She was trying to bring Newt in. I mean, it's just, the authority figures are often in Rowling's world are often less competent than everyone else. In fact, it's almost the case as the further down the structure you go, the more competent the people are. Does that strike you as being on target, or am I off base? What do you think?
No, I think that's pretty consistent with what we've seen throughout the series, that you really couldn't trust the adults in the the basic Harry Potter series, because there were just so many things that they did that were just so untrustworthy. The kids pretty much had to rely on themselves, like, Dumbledore's army, for example, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so I think this is just an extension of what we saw, 70 years later.
Okay.
So, right. Yeah. I think it has to fit too, because this is when you're moving outside of the realm of a kid's book, and no longer can we say it's just, oh, well, kids actually have a different understanding than the rest of us. You actually have to show that, well, these people are actually slightly incompetent. They are not doing what they need to be doing. And I think it really goes back to that sense of the fickleness of magic and the ease with which you can do things, and how simple it is to be kind of bewitched, for lack of a better term, into, just having that power and getting lazy about all of the other things that you do. And so arbitrary and absolute definitely come up as sisters in that kind of situation.
So the more power that you have, the greater the consequences there need to be for the abuse of that power.
Right.
That's not a bad way of looking at it. Although I have to say, executing people by drowning them in acid while keeping them pacified with pleasant memories of their past, that seems to be really over the top punishment.
Yes. Yeah. No. I definitely agree with that. Well, and that's why I think I like Newt's stance at the end when, because I think he's not a pacifist in your traditional sense of like, I'm not going to confront things, but he gets to the end and he's more intrigued about learning the whole story than he is about just solving the problem. And so everyone else gets there, and their solution to the problem is, well, the Obscurial needs to be dealt with because it killed someone. And so, and that's just it. And he's more interested in trying to figure out what the whole story is. And because of that, he actually is able to get to the whole story and to see beyond just the issue of the Obscurial, but also that there was someone inside that was working this issue.
From a Christian point of view, I mean, it's a redemption idea. Is the authorities, the MACUSA authorities in this case, they're very black and white. That's evil, blast it. That's right. Whereas Newt sees Credence and he sees a boy in pain who has a power he can't control, and he wants to help him. It's, in a sense, this Obscurial is almost like a mental illness, if you were to equate it with a real world problem, that where it boils out in violence. And his solution is, I want to understand, I want to care, and he offers a hand of what we would call charity or love to him, as opposed to what the other solution was, which was to blast him, because as sort of a retributive justice as opposed to redemptive. So I thought, that was a good point. Thank you for bringing that out. Mm-hmm. So one of the other things I wanted to kind of to get at is I wanted to mention the interesting thing about the New Salem Preservation Society. This woman, Mary Lou Barebones, who has apparently adopted these kids. She's kind of taken them in and is using them as a sort of a workforce to advance her cause. We don't know why she has this problem with the Wizarding World, where I suppose we're supposed to presume it's sort of a religious bias behind it. Although there's lots of trappings of religiosity, of what we would recognize of a fundamentalist viewpoint religion, without it being explicit. So I do appreciate them not explicitly making her into a fundamentalist Christian bigot, that sort of thing. That would be hard to carry. But they I mean, it looks like they operate out of a church, and there's a lot of things that have that feeling to it. One of the things I found interesting is one of the children is mentioned, Modesty, the one that they originally think has the Obscurial, was adopted out of a family of 12. She wasn't even an orphan. And I think we're touching on that societal understanding that I think you mentioned, Thomas, like that in that time period, there were these big families, the Irish families, Italian families, they couldn't always feed everyone, and sometimes the children were put in orphanages, not because they were actually orphans, but because they couldn't be fed. And it sort of hits at a world, at the grittiness of the reality of the world as it was. It's not an idealized world here that we're working with.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that take on it as a contrast to the magical world, when you can walk into a suitcase and be in a laboratory that's infinitely large with all these fantastic beasts. There's still a lot of dirt to deal with in our real world where we are,
right?
Even for the wizards.
Yeah.
Well, now, if we're seeing that this film was set in the late 1920s, in New York, wasn't that around the time of the Great Depression? Or was that a little bit before?
This would have been just before the Depression. So the Depression started in 1929. The crash was October 29.
Okay.
So this is probably like just before that. This is the Roaring 20s. But of course, we in our history classes we learned that the 20s were a time of the Great Gatsby and lots of money. But this shows that there always will be the poor people, the people living in slums and stuff, and we see a lot of them. I mean, Barebones, Mary Lou Barebones has a lot of these street kids that she gets to work for her on the condition that they get to have some soup on the condition they hand out her pamphlets. And she's not a nice person.
Right.
I mean, just to put it nicely, to put it bluntly, she beats her kids, and she's a child abuser. She's not loving in any sense. She's just a bad person all around in this. And she's a fairly flat, thin character. There's not much there, not even much emotion there really in her. She's sort of a symbol, really, more than anything else. Trying to think of other things. Is there any other points that you'd like to bring out? I have one last bit that I want to bring out, but if you have anything else that stood out to you that we haven't discussed.
The one thing that bothers me about the movie that I really want to know, this is like the burning question in the back of my mind, and because Redmayne plays it so well. The first time that he switches his case over to Muggle-worthy,
yeah,
and turns it around, the looks that he gives the officer, I wonder if he ever knows what's in there.
Right. The Muggle sees it, but not him.
Right,
that's
like
right.
He never knows what's actually being seen on the other end of that case.
Well, that Hufflepuff scarf.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
We find out that he's a Hufflepuff. Lynn, anything that stands out for you that we haven't discussed yet?
I was just kind of thinking. So the Obscurial claimed 2 victims, I think, during the film. Yeah. That sound about right. And so I was just thinking it's very interesting, the choice of victims. So the first one was that senator character who we first saw in that newspaper office, right? And so, and then of course the second victim was that abusive mother. So it just kind of makes me wonder, is there any sort of rhyme or reason as to why those particular 2 were chosen to be the Obscurial's victims? I mean, this might be throwing a tangent in the works, but it just made me wonder.
I think it's because the Obscurial was an expression of Credence's pain, and the senator was so cruel to them in the newspaper office.
Yeah.
And unnecessarily, like he went out of his way to be a jerk to him.
Right.
And I think I think that's what motivated that action. And then, Credence didn't act out against his mother when she beat him, but when she went for the girl, his sister, his adoptive sister, that's when the Obscurial went after her. So, which I think speaks to his character a little bit. His not character as in story character, but his internal character, his integrity, where it wasn't he wasn't wielding power because I'm strong. He actually wanted to hold it in, but when someone he loved, his sister, was being attacked unjustly, he let it out. And it's sort of an interesting choice that they did there. Again, it shows how Newt was right to kind of seek to reach out to him, to find the good in him.
Mm-hmm. And apparently this is a character that's supposed to be coming back, or that's supposed to be playing some kind of larger role in the canon. So we'll see. Again, I think that's the really cool part about being involved in this series, because we don't have any books to go back and reference, and we don't know where this story is going.
So that's actually, I wanted to make that my last point of discussion. The first 8 movies were based on books, and they were movies made from books. This is a Harry Potter universe. It's not a Potter movie technically, but it's a Harry Potter verse movie made from a screenplay, from a J.K. Rowling screenplay. Thomas, since you said this is your favorite of the films, I'll go to you first on this. Do you think that this is why this is your favorite, because it doesn't bear the burden of being an adaptation?
It's possible. I actually really liked the movies for what they were. I thought that they did a great job of taking what they needed from the book and then kind of throwing away the rest and doing what they needed to do to complete a movie. The last few got really heavy and long, and I think they would have done well to go back to that kind of initial, what's really important here, let's get it on the screen and be done with it. And I was really interested that this one opens up so much more of the world, because it does what a good movie does, where it knows it's limited to the 2 hours. It asks a bunch of questions and then lets it go. And that, I think, is one of the really powerful things about a movie versus a book, where you can kind of explore things in a book. In a movie, you just have to throw it out there and hope it sticks and just move on.
Yeah. Well, J.K. Rowling also had what she called the Scottish book. I think that's what she called it. So she pretty much mapped out everything in the wizarding world. And of course, picked what she included for the Harry Potter books. But there's still a whole huge universe that is still in her head that now she gets a chance to express it in these 5 films. And so I think that's also what will make this interesting. She doesn't have to be constrained, or the screenwriters don't have to be constrained with, oh, this is in the book and this is in the book. Yeah, they don't have to be constrained with this. So she could really take it in whatever direction she wants to take it.
And it's interesting to point out that the director, David Yates, he has directed every Harry Potter film since the 5th one, Order of the Phoenix, I think, was his first one. And he's directed them all since then. I'm pretty sure that's all of them.
And I think he's been contracted to direct all 5 of these films. So at least there's going to be that kind of continuity, unlike with the Harry Potter films. There was actually a loss of continuity from director to director because, so you could really see this just, that there just seems to be some disjointedness between at least the first 3 or 4 films. And then after a while, you see the continuity once David Yates took over.
Yeah, I think that benefits. I mean, if you could imagine if you'd had different directors directing the 6 Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit films, whatever troubles or problems those movies had, we could talk about those another time. But at least they had a continuity of vision. I was always concerned when we heard that Guillermo del Toro was going to do The Hobbit, and he's a very different vision than Peter Jackson and that sort of thing. And that's something that I think, by putting David Yates in and saying, this guy has the vision for the Potterverse, let's keep him on these movies. So good. I think that's it. I mean, we're certainly not done talking about Harry Potter on SQPN. I mean, this is our bread and butter. When the new movie comes out, I'm sure we're going to talk about it again then. So this is a good opportunity to talk about it now. So I just want to say this. So that's it from us on Fantastic Beasts. And so I want to put it out to you, the listeners. What do you think of this movie, Fantastic Beasts, and where to find them, as well as our discussion? Did we miss anything that you thought was really important point that we didn't bring up? Or Do you agree or disagree? We want to hear from you. So visit sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and look for SQPN and leave us some feedback on the show, on the episode link there, or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. We'd love to include your feedback in future shows. You can find relevant links for our discussion on our show notes on sqpn.com. And like I said, be sure to subscribe to our podcast in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and remember to write a review there, like, comment, and share to help us grow to reach more people. And until next time, Thomas Senjuro, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Fantastic Beasts and where to find them.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Lynn Francisco, thank you as well.
Pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on StarQuest.